In the quiet folds of southern Kyoto Prefecture lies the town of Yuji, nestled between mist-veiled hills and ancient groves of pine and cedar. It is early morning. The sun has only just begun to crest the tree-lined ridges, casting a diffused golden light across the valley. Fog lingers low and thick, like a breath held softly between the peaks. The dew from the night before still clings to the leaves, refracting the first rays of daylight into a shimmering haze. A stream winds its way down from the higher slopes, its trickling voice the only interruption to the silence. For centuries, the hills of Yuji have cultivated something rare and exquisite: tea. Not just any tea, but the finest, most delicate green tea Yuji-sha. Known across Japan as a center of refinement and excellence, Yuji's climate, soil, and centuries-old growing techniques have combined to produce teas revered for their subtlety, richness, and quiet depth. Tea, here, is not just an agricultural product. It is a philosophy, a way of life, a rhythm of the seasons, of labor and patience, of nature and harmony. The process begins not in the tea house, nor even in the drying rooms, but here in the early morning, under the mist, with the leaves still clinging to their branches. Walking among the tea fields, one can see the neat rows of bushes, each trimmed carefully to waist height for easy harvesting. Their leaves are a vibrant green, almost luminous in the diffuse light of dawn. They are soft, supple, new. The tea harvest, or ichibansha, takes place just once each year late spring, when the first flush of new leaves has grown after winter dormancy. These first leaves are prized above all others. They hold the sweetness, the umami, and the subtle grassy notes that tea connoisseurs wait all year to experience. Among the rows walks a tea farmer, perhaps a member of a family that has worked these same hills for generations. His steps are slow, deliberate, not from fatigue, but from reverence. The leaves are inspected individually, the tenderest shoots selected by hand. There are no machines, no haste. This is not industrial farming. It is intimate, contemplative. The air smells of earth, damp wood, and fresh vegetation. Occasionally, a bird calls out a warbler, perhaps, or a thrush from the nearby forest. But otherwise, there is only the faint rustling of leaves as they are plucked and laid gently into woven baskets carried on the back. Some of these tea farmers have practiced the craft for decades. Their hands, though weathered, move with grace. They know the feel of the ideal leaf, its shape, its texture, its pliancy. Each motion is practiced, not hurried. There is no room for hurry here. To rush would be to lose the integrity of the leaf, to disrupt its flavor. Time, in Yuji, moves differently. And yet, it is not simply about the leaves. The setting, too, plays a role. The terroir, this combination of mist, mineral-rich soil, sloping land, and consistent rainfall, imparts a character unique to Yuji. The mist protects the leaves from the harsh midday sun, allowing chlorophyll to develop more slowly. This increases the amino acid content, especially L-theanine, which contributes to the sweet and umami-rich flavor of shaded teas like Gyokuro and Matcha. By the time the morning begins to warm, the first baskets of fresh leaves are full. They will be carried down narrow stone paths to the processing rooms, simple wooden structures with sliding doors and thatched or tiled roofs. But before we follow them, let us linger a moment more here, among the hills. The mist begins to lift, revealing more clearly the contours of the land, the small footbridges, the shrines tucked away under maple trees, the careful grid of tea rows that stretch out in quiet symmetry. This moment, the early morning harvest, marks the beginning of the tea's journey. A journey that will continue through steam, stone, fire, and water, until at last it reaches the bowl of a guest seated cross-legged in a tatami room. But all of that still lies ahead. For now, in the hush of morning, the first step is complete. The day progresses gently in Yuji. As the mist thins and the first warmth of morning settles over the hills, the tea fields stir with life. More farmers begin to appear among the rows, dressed in traditional work garments, indigo-dyed jackets, wide straw hats, and cloth sleeves tied to wrists. Some are young, learning the rhythm from their elders. Others are older, their movements quiet and sure, a reflection of years spent among the bushes. Harvesting begins in earnest. This is the Ichibansha, the first tea harvest of the year and the most revered. The leaves are soft and pliant, still small, still full of life. They are not ripped or torn from the branch, but coaxed. The tips of the fingers bend the sprig forward, a gentle twist, a soft pluck. Only the youngest leaves are taken, the bud and the two leaves just beneath it. The silence in the fields is deep and respectful. Conversations are few, and when they happen, they are murmured, carried no farther than the shoulder of the listener. The work is repetitive, yes, but not dull. Each leaf is a decision. Is it ready? Has it grown too much? Too little? The fingers read these answers as surely as the eyes. The harvesters move slowly, deliberately. A rhythm develops: pluck, inspect, place into the basket. Pluck, inspect, place. Some listen to the rustle of leaves as they work. Others move by feel alone, their eyes closed to the morning light. The connection between hand and plant is not mechanical. It is intimate. As baskets fill, they are brought to shaded cloths laid beside the fields. The leaves are spread in thin layers to cool, the warmth of the sun too harsh for their freshness. They must be kept supple, hydrated, unbruised. A bruised leaf can sour the entire batch. Back in the fields, the process continues for hours. Slowly, gently, the hills are gathered. Children may assist in small ways carrying water for the workers, keeping birds away with wooden clappers. Occasionally, a traveler or local priest will stop to offer a word of gratitude or a respectful bow. The tea harvest is not merely agricultural labor, it is a sacred act, and the community understands this. Lunch is taken under trees, beside small shrines, or in family homes nearby. It is modest: a bowl of rice, pickled vegetables, maybe a bowl of broth. There is no rush to return to the fields. Time here is measured in light, not minutes. The farmers sit quietly, reflecting, their hands stained faint green from the morning's work. In the afternoon, as the sun arcs overhead, the leaves begin to show signs of restlessness. They stiffen slightly, thirsting for the moisture lost to the air. This is when the harvest must end. Only the morning's leaves are good enough for matcha or gyokuro. Afternoon leaves are set aside for other types of tea less delicate, more robust. The collected leaves are taken in cloth bundles to the processing house, where they will be steamed, rolled, dried, and ground. But before we follow them, let us pause here as the day quiets once more. The hills are peaceful. The baskets are empty. The farmers wash their hands in the stream, whispering thanks to the spirits of the field. The harvest has ended. The next step in the tea's transformation is about to begin. The tea leaves, freshly plucked and vibrant with life, are not stored for long. Time, which moved slowly through the harvest, now demands a gentle urgency. If the leaves are left to rest too long, they will begin to oxidize, their color darkening, their fragrance fading. For matcha and other premium green teas, this cannot be allowed. And so, within hours of the harvest's end, the next phase begins. At the edge of the village, where the paths from the fields taper into narrow stone steps, there stands a humble structure, wooden, weathered, with sliding paper doors and the faint scent of pine smoke in the air. This is the processing house. Inside, a soft heat fills the space, not stifling, but constant. The scent is sharp, green, vegetal steam and leaves mingled in the air. The first step is steaming. The leaves are laid in thin layers within bamboo trays or mesh-lined baskets. A large iron pot, embedded into the floor and fired by charcoal or wood, sends up gentle clouds of steam. The leaves are passed above it, briefly and evenly, for only 20 to 30 seconds. This steaming halts the enzymatic process that leads to oxidation, preserving the leaf's bright color and fresh flavor. It is a delicate balance. Too little steam, and the tea becomes bitter. Too much, and it turns limp, losing its integrity. The workers here move slowly, reverently. There is no haste, no shouted orders. Each movement is purposeful. They watch for subtle signs, the slight change in the leaf's sheen, the scent shifting from raw to sweet. When it is time, the trays are removed and placed on cool woven mats to rest. The next stage is rolling. This, too, is done by hand, though, in some places. Machines modeled after hand-rolling techniques may assist. Traditionally, the leaves are placed on a warm, flat surface, a woven bamboo mat or heated board, and rolled with the palms in circular motions. The motion is firm, but never aggressive. It mimics the way one might knead soft cloth or shape a delicate scroll. The purpose of rolling is threefold: to shape the leaf, to remove excess moisture, and to break down the cellular walls, allowing the inner essences, the oils and amino acids, to emerge. The rolling goes through stages. First, the leaves are loosely twisted, then gradually rolled tighter, more slender. Between each stage, they are dried slightly, then returned to the mat. This cycle can take hours. Those who perform this task speak rarely. Their minds are quiet, focused entirely on the motion and the feel of the leaves beneath their hands. Some hum softly. Others work in silence, their breath slow and steady. The room, though filled with motion, feels meditative. The scent grows richer, deeper. What was once the raw smell of foliage becomes tea subtle, comforting, familiar. To witness this process is to understand the spirit of Japanese tea. It is not merely about the end result. It is about presence. The leaves are transformed not through speed or force, but through attention. The tea makers give their full selves to the task, and in return, the leaves offer their full potential. As the sun begins to lower outside, the final rolled leaves are spread in thin layers to dry. This may be done in wooden cabinets warmed by fire, or on low racks in the open air. The tea is not yet finished. It will rest, age slightly, and for matcha, it will be ground later still. But this part of its journey is complete. Let us pause here in the quiet of the processing room. The tools have been cleaned, the mats rolled and stored. The day's work lies cooling in trays lined with soft cloth. Outside, the sound of a nightingale rises. The hills have darkened to shadow, and a small lantern glows on the porch. Tomorrow will bring another round of steaming, another session of slow rolling. But for now, the day closes. The leaves, transformed by water, heat, and human touch, are ready for their next awakening. The journey of the tea leaf is not yet complete. For some of the harvest, those tender leaves shaded longer beneath darkened cloths, grown for their softness, their vibrant hue, and their gentle sweetness, a more intricate destiny lies ahead. These are the leaves destined to become matcha. Before they are transformed into the fine, velvety powder known to tea practitioners and drinkers alike, they undergo yet another slow refinement. First, the leaves are meticulously sorted. The stems and veins are removed by hand or fine sieves, leaving only the softest leaf tissues. This form of processed leaf is known as tencha. Unlike sencha or gokuro, tencha is not rolled. It is left flat and brittle, light and dry, a texture that is ideal for grinding. Tencha rests quietly in handmade paper packets or ceramic jars, stored away from sunlight, away from heat, often in earthen storehouses with thick walls. It must mature gently, not oxidize or ferment, but rest. Like rice polished before the fire, tencha is the quiet precursor to something profound. The grinding of tencha into matcha is an art all its own. In the corner of a shaded room, with only the sound of rustling bamboo outside and the soft creak of a door's wooden frame, there sits the heart of the operation, the ishiyus, a stone mill. Carved from two perfectly balanced discs of granite, the mill turns not by motor or flame, but by hand. The upper stone bears a small funnel-like cavity into which the tencha leaves are carefully fed, a pinch at a time. As the handle is turned, the leaves are slowly drawn into the narrow grooves carved into the stone's mating surfaces. These spiraling ridges, made by a practiced craftsman with a steady chisel and a sense of intuition, guide the leaves outward as the stones revolve. It is a quiet motion, a whispering rhythm. The sound is faint, a brushing sigh, a murmuring circle. The grinding is slow, deliberately so. If done too quickly, the stones generate heat, and heat damages matcha. It dulls the flavor, destroys the vivid color, and leaves a faint bitterness in the cup. And so, a single ishi used may produce only 30 to 40 grams of matcha per hour, just enough to fill a small jar. The powder that results is unlike anything else. It is not ground into coarse particles or flakes, but into a microscopic dust, so fine it floats on the air, clings to skin, and disperses in water with a gentle stir. Its color is brilliant, luminous, almost unreal green, like moss in moonlight or young spring grass lit from within. This powder is carefully gathered with a feather-soft brush and transferred into lacquered containers or unglazed ceramic canisters. Every motion is deliberate. Every jar is sealed with care, wrapped in cloth, and often tied with string in a traditional knot. Before matcha is consumed, it must be sifted again. Even the finest powder can settle or clump, and so a silk or mesh sieve is used to lighten and refresh it. This is done immediately before use, in a quiet corner of the tea preparation space, with a bamboo spatula and calm hands. The drinker will never see this part, but the host, the tea maker, knows that even these hidden steps shape the experience. Matcha is not brewed. It is not steeped. It is suspended. A few grams of powder are placed in a warm chawan, a tea bowl that may be rustic or refined, simple or elaborately glazed. Hot water never boiling, but just below is poured in, and then the chasen appears. This bamboo whisk, carved from a single piece of bamboo by hand, is perhaps the most iconic tool in the tea ceremony. Its tines are fine and flexible, capable of turning water and powder into a luminous froth. The motion is specific, a brisk juice shape, never a circle. The sound is faint, a soft pattering like gentle rain. As the whisk lifts, the surface of the tea gleams with fine bubbles. The scent rises green, clean, and faintly sweet. A breath of the field, now tamed into liquid. This chapter of the leaf's life, this transformation into stone-ground matcha, represents both mastery and humility. The grinding stones do not race. The whisk does not command. Each tool plays its part without haste, in harmony. And so the tea is born, not as a leaf, but as an essence. Tomorrow, it will meet the bowl and the guest. But tonight, the matcha rests. The tools of the Japanese tea ceremony are not merely utensils. They are vessels of intention, each one infused with the quiet artistry of generations, each one a bridge between the human hand and the natural world. Preparing these tools is as sacred and methodical as the preparation of the tea itself. It is not a mechanical process, but a ritual of mindfulness and care. In the soft hush of morning, before the first guest arrives, the host begins this preparation. A quiet room awaits. Tatami mats line the floor, and light from a paper-covered shoshi window falls in pale rectangles across the woven surface. Outside, the bamboo rustles. Inside, the air is still. The chowan, or tea bowl, is chosen first. It may be rakuware, earthy, dark, and uneven, or it may be porcelain, smooth and pale as eggshell. Each bowl has a season. A winter bowl may be deep and black, absorbing the heat. A summer bowl, shallow and light, allowing the tea to cool more quickly. The host turns it gently in their hands, feeling the weight, the texture. There is no rush. Next comes the chasen the whisk. Carved from a single piece of bamboo, the chasen's tines curl outward like delicate eyelashes. It is stored dry, but before use, it is soaked in warm water to soften its fibers and prepare it for motion. The soaking bowl is shallow, wide, and smooth. As the chasen rests there, it almost appears to bloom. Then the chashaku, the bamboo scoop. Its form is simple, curved with the memory of steam. Each scoop is hand-shaped, and while it may seem humble, it is revered. The curve must be precise to lift just the right amount of matcha powder, neither too much nor too little. The scoop is wiped with a clean silk cloth, folded in a particular way. There is also the natsum, or sha-ire, the container for the matcha itself. The natsum, used in informal gatherings, is often made of lacquered wood, its surface polished to a soft gleam. The cha-ire, used for formal gatherings, is more austere, sometimes made of ceramic and tied in a silk pouch known as a shifuku. Each is opened with care, the lid removed in a single fluid motion. The host prepares a clean fukusa, a silk cloth, usually a deep color like plum, indigo, or rust. It is folded in exact ways depending on the school and ritual being followed. It is used to purify the utensils, not in the sense of sterilization, but in the ritual sense, to offer respect, to mark the beginning. Each motion in the preparation of these tools is slow, practiced, and deliberate. Hands move without hesitation, but never with speed. The cloth is folded once, then again and again. The whisk is lifted, turned, placed. The bowl is wiped not merely to clean, but to connect. There is a profound stillness in this preparation. The room remains quiet. Only the soft swish of silk on ceramic, the faint clink of bamboo against wood. These sounds are not distractions. They are part of the symphony of readiness. Outside, the light shifts. A pine shadow moves slightly along the paper wall. The kettle, hung above a charcoal hearth, begins to murmur. Not a boil, but a low, steady sigh, what the Japanese call matsukasi, or wind in the pines. It is the sound by which the temperature of the water is judged. Too quiet, and it is too cool. Too loud, and it is too odd. The host watches the steam curl upward, testing it not with a thermometer, but with the senses' eyes, ears, breath. When the time is right, the tools are assembled, the bowl placed at a precise angle, the scoop resting beside it, the whisk standing tall, the container aligned just so. It is not mere display, it is a geometry of welcome. Even when no guest is present, this preparation is never rushed. The tools are treated not as possessions, but as partners in a dialogue. Each one has its own history, its own subtle voice. Some were made by known artisans, their marks faintly etched in clay. Others were handed down through families, used for decades, their surfaces worn by care. To prepare the tools is to center the self. It is a meditation, a stillness before the unfolding. It is as if the room itself takes a breath, gathering the quiet before the act of serving begins. Soon the guest will enter. Soon the tea will be made. But for now, the space is ready. The bowl waits, the water warms, and the tools, each one precisely chosen and lovingly prepared, rest in perfect silence. The room is ready. The tools are arranged. And now the guest arrives. They step softly through the garden path, each stone placed to slow the pace, to quiet the mind. The path meanders, encouraging a pause, a breath. As the guest walks beneath a low gate, they bow slightly not to the host, but to the space, to the moment. Here, ceremony begins not with speech, but with presence. At the entrance to the tea room, shoes are removed. The door is low, requiring the guest to bend as they enter, a gesture of humility, of equality. Inside, the tatami mat is cool beneath their feet. The room is small, often no more than 4.5 mats. Its walls may hold a single scroll, chosen to reflect the season or mood, and a simple flower arrangement ikebana placed to honor nature. The guest bows to the host. The host returns the bow. No words yet, just stillness. The host begins the ritual. Each motion is deliberate, each movement purposeful and slow. The tea container is lifted, examined, and opened with great care. The shashaku, or scoop, is cleaned with a fukusa, the silk cloth folded and unfolded in practiced gestures. It is not the cleaning that matters, but the attention, the respect. Then the chowan, the tea bowl, is lifted, turned, inspected, wiped. The whisk is removed from its resting place, its tine straight and glistening from the earlier soak. The host moves with a grace that speaks of repetition, not mechanical, but meditative, as if the hands remember more than the mind. Water is ladled into the bowl, not from a tap or a kettle, but from the kama, a traditional iron pot suspended above coals. The sound is gentle, the ladle wooden. The steam curls upward in slow spirals. The host observes the water, judging its readiness by sound and feel. A measured amount of matcha is placed into the bowl. One scoop, then another, sometimes 3. The powder sits in the center like a green jewel, luminous and waiting. Then the water, poured with care, not to flood, but to invite. The whisk enters the bowl. The host begins to move it. Not a circle, not a line, but a shape like the letter M or the branches of a pine. The motion is light, the wrist loose. The tea begins to foam, a pale froth forming at the surface. It is not thick, but fine, soft as clouds. The scent of warm green tea fills the air grassy, sweet, and clean. When it is ready, the whisk is removed. The bowl is turned so the front faces the guest. The host slides it forward, bowing. The guest receives it with 2 hands, lifts it, and bows in return. Before drinking, the guest admires the bowl, its shape, its glaze, its imperfections. No 2 bowls are alike. This moment is singular. They turn it slightly, then take a sip. Not a gulp, but a pause. The tea is warm, earthy, calming. A liquid stillness. The guest sips slowly, usually in 3 sips, savoring the flavor, the texture. When finished, they examine the bowl once more, appreciating its form. Then it is returned. The host receives it with equal care, cleaning it with quiet reverence. There may be conversation now, or perhaps stillness. Some ceremonies include sweets before or after the tea, small confections shaped like leaves, flowers, or snow. Their taste is delicate, their appearance poetic. But whether words are spoken or silence is kept, the ceremony continues. Another bowl may be served, or the guest may simply sit, absorbing the space, the rhythm, the warmth. The ceremony is not performance. It is not spectacle. It is shared presence, a slowing down, a setting aside of distraction. When the final bow is exchanged and the guest rises to leave, they do so changed, not dramatically, but gently. The outside world feels a little quieter, the air a little softer, the heart, perhaps, a little more at peace. This is the power of tea, not to dazzle, but to still. Evening settles softly over the village, drawing a long shadow across the narrow lanes and bamboo thickets. The sun has dipped below the cedar-covered ridges, and the sky, once golden, begins to turn a soft indigo. In the distance, a bell tolls once, slow and low. It is not a call to gather, but a gentle announcement. The day is drawing to a close. Inside a modest tea house, a hearth glows with the last warmth of the day. The tools have been cleaned and stored, the chowan dried and placed in its resting spot, the whisk returned to its stand. The scent of tea still lingers faintly in the air, grassy, floral, with a whisper of earth. This is the hour of reflection. The host sits alone now, not in preparation or performance, but in presence. The act of making tea is complete, yet the stillness it invoked remains. Like ripples after a stone's fall, the quiet radiates outward. In one corner of the room, a candle flickers inside a ceramic lantern. Its flame dances gently, illuminating the curve of a scroll hanging on the wall. The calligraphy reads, perhaps, Ichigo Ichi, one time, one meeting. A reminder that each encounter, however simple, is unrepeatable. A moment held in perfect, impermanent balance. The host's fingers rest lightly against the rim of the tea bowl. They trace the small imperfections of the glaze, the slight bump of the potter's thumb, the way the ash settled in one place more heavily than another. These marks are not flaws, but signs of life, of care, of the human hand. Outside, the cicadas have quieted. In their place, a new sound emerges, the low hoot of an owl, the rustle of wind through tall grass. Occasionally, a drop of water falls from the edge of a stone basin into a shallow pool, the sound echoing slightly in the night. There is no need to speak, no need to analyze or record. This time is not for thought, but for being. The warmth of the tea still lingers in the body, a soft pulse beneath the skin. The heart slows, the breath deepens. Evening reflection is not a formal part of the tea ceremony, but for many practitioners, it is the true heart of it. The ceremony may be over, the guests gone, the tools put away, but the essence of the moment remains. And in this stillness, one finds clarity. Perhaps the host remembers a lesson from their teacher, how to fold the cloth just so, or how to listen for the kettle's whisper. Perhaps they remember their first ceremony as a guest, the awe of silence, the beauty of the mundane. Or perhaps they remember the faces of those no longer here, mentors, elders, friends, who once shared tea and now reside only in memory. In Japan, memory is not an interruption of the present, but a companion to it. To remember is not to retreat, but to honor. Evening brings this gently to the surface. The room darkens. The candle shrinks. The embers in the hearth give one last glow before cooling into ash. The host stands slowly, sliding the door open. Outside, the night has fully arrived. The moon is high, silver, and silent. It reflects in the garden's water basin, distorted slightly by a drifting leaf. A wind passes through the trees, and the bamboo taps gently against the eaves of the house. Before turning in, the host takes one final look at the tea room, empty now, but not vacant. The spirit of the practice, the calm of the day, remains. This too is tea. In the quiet folds of the countryside, traditions pass not with proclamations, but through gestures, observations, and years of quiet apprenticeship. The art of tea in Japan is not only a practice of individuals, but a thread woven through families, towns, and schools of thought each, preserving something fragile and deeply rooted. Within some tea families, the knowledge is passed down like a soft-spoken inheritance. A child watches their parent prepare the chādō, perhaps first as a game, then with growing reverence. The scent of roasted tea becomes the scent of home. The turn of a wrist, the folding of a cloth, becomes a language. Training begins not in ceremony, but in repetition. Young students clean floors, gather firewood, wash tea bowls. They sit in the corner during gatherings, silent, watching the older practitioners move. Nothing is explained immediately. The lesson is in the rhythm, the attention, the silence. In time, they begin to assist, folding the fukusa, setting out the tools, carrying the sweets from the kitchen, always watching, always listening. It may be years before they whisk their first bowl for a guest. Some schools, like Yureisenk or Omotsenk, maintain precise lineages stretching back centuries. Each generation adds a subtle inflection, a whisper of change, but the heart remains unchanged. The founders' teachings are kept alive not as dogma, but as a living form. Lineage is not only about blood, but about spirit. A teacher and student may be unrelated by birth, yet deeply connected through their shared discipline. The passing of a chashaku, a scroll, a single phrase, these are the bequests of tea. There are also potters who make tea bowls in workshops, lit by natural light and warmed by old kilns. Their apprentices study glaze formulas, clay sources, firing temperatures. The bowls they shape are not factory perfect. They warp slightly, they crackle, they bear fingerprints. These imperfections make them cherished. A bowl made by a grandparent may one day be used by a grandchild, not for display, but for ceremony. Its edge worn smooth by decades of lips, its bottom signed faintly by a hand now gone. The bowl becomes a vessel of memory. In some households, there are family jars, ceramic containers used to store the year's special tea, wrapped and re-wrapped in fine cloth, opened only for special occasions. Each time it is unsealed, the room fills with memory. Children learn not just by doing, but by being included. They sit during early morning tea, watching the steam rise in stillness. They carry on the gestures before they understand their meaning, and in time, the meaning finds them. Some may stray from the practice in adulthood, returning later. Others may find new ways to express the tradition, in painting, in poetry, in modern ceramics. But always there is a return. Tea, once part of one's childhood rhythm, becomes a compass. And in this way, the generations flow together, not in ceremony halls alone, but in kitchens, back gardens, and silent rooms. A grandmother teaching her granddaughter how to pour the water just right. A father adjusting his son's grip on the chasen. A teacher waiting patiently as a student stirs the tea too long, then too short, and finally just right. Generations of tea are not only the story of lineage, but of persistence. Through wars, through famines, through rapid modernization, the way of tea has remained, sometimes diminished, sometimes hidden, but never gone. Because it is not about the tea alone. It is about time, about being together in silence, about noticing the light fall across a tatami mat and realizing it is beautiful. As the night deepens and the house grows quiet, an elder might prepare a final bowl alone. Their hands know the motions, so well they no longer think. They whisk, they sip, they breathe. And in that moment, the entire lineage breathes with them. Long before the tea leaf meets the bowl, Long before the ceremony, the froth, or even the harvest, there exists a quiet philosophy held gently in the palm of every traditional tea maker. This philosophy is not spoken aloud. It is not written in books or etched into the sides of tools. It lives in gestures, in choices, in restraint. The tea leaf, in its humble greenness, is a teacher. From its first unfurling on the branch, it is shaped by wind, rain, and sun. It knows movement and stillness, abundance and scarcity. It thrives not in extremes, but in balance. The traditional tea maker watches the leaf through the seasons, and in watching, they learn. In the world of tea, there is no need for adornment, no urgency for transformation. The leaf is not asked to become more than what it is. It is simply encouraged to be itself more deeply. When the leaves are shaded before harvest, it is not to impose change, but to draw out hidden qualities, sweetness, tenderness, depth. In shade, the leaf slows its growth, concentrates its essence. This slowing is key. Time, not pressure, reveals the richness. The philosophy extends into every step of the process. When steaming, the goal is not to dominate, but to preserve. When rolling, not to compress, but to coax. When grinding, not to crush, but to refine. At every stage, the tea maker listens to texture, to moisture, to scent. There is a word in Japanese, mushin. It means no mind. Not emptiness, but clarity, a state of presence unclouded by ego or effort. The best tea, many say, comes from mushin. When the hand moves without force, when the mind observes without grasping. Tea is not forced into flavor, it is invited. And so, too, the drinker is invited not to consume, but to experience, to be with the tea, not ahead of it. A bowl of matcha is not merely a beverage, it is a reflection. The foam on its surface may mirror the clouds outside, the warmth in the hand, the warmth within. Each sip is a moment, complete, fleeting. Wabi-sabi, another deeply held concept, flows through the tea world as well. It is the appreciation of the imperfect, the transient, the incomplete. A chipped tea bowl, rather than being discarded, is honored. A tea house with uneven walls, a scoop slightly off-center, these are not flaws. They are signs of life, of time. The leaf does not pretend. It does not perform. It simply offers. And in this offering, the drinker may find themselves slowing, softening. There are no grand declarations in the tea philosophy, no manifestos, only presence. The quiet understanding that meaning arises not from control, but from attention. To drink tea made with this philosophy is to participate in something ancient, not in years, but in spirit, a rhythm of slowing, of returning, of breathing. The tea maker's path is not one of ambition, but of attunement. It is not the pursuit of excellence, but of harmony, and it begins and ends with a single silent leaf. In the way of traditional Japanese tea, time is never absent. It is felt in the thickness of the air, the temperature of the water, the shadow cast by the tea bowl. Yet more than time, it is the seasons that breathe most deeply within the ritual. Each movement, each utensil, each quiet moment shifts like petals through the year. The seasons are not merely observed in tea. They are invited inside, offered a seat, and served with care. Spring arrives like a held breath released. The chill that once lingered in the floorboards lifts, replaced by a new softness in the air. Plum blossoms open along the edge of the garden path, pale and fragrant. The first green appears not just in the fields, but in the soul. Inside the tea room, the scroll might carry a short poem haiku written in a fine, spare hand. The breeze of spring. Over the old mountain path, new leaves quietly grow. Everything is chosen to reflect this quiet awakening. The matcha is freshly milled from the first flush of the leaves, young, sweet, with a delicate aroma of new grass. The bowl might be soft in color, the glaze like morning mist on stone. Sweets arrive in the form of cherry petals or shimmering drops of yokin, translucent and cool. The room is brighter, the light more diffused, and the breeze, allowed and through a slightly open shoshi, carries with it the scent of renewal. The tea, carefully whisked, rests lightly in the bowl, a spring morning, warm and green, held in porcelain. Summer does not announce itself. It gathers. Slowly, insistently, with days that stretch long and silent. The air becomes thick with humidity. Cicadas buzz from the trees, and the world seems to move more slowly, more deliberately. In the tea room, this shift is met with subtle hospitality. The charcoal fire is reduced or replaced by a brazier. The host might choose a wide, shallow bowl, something that releases heat, that feels cool to the touch. Perhaps a glass mizusashi holds fresh water, and the vase on the shelf contains a single reed or a sprig of bamboo. The matcha is whisked lightly, forming a thinner layer of foam. It cools faster, tastes softer. The sweets offered may include chilled Canton jelly or rice cakes wrapped in bamboo leaves. The season urges the body to rest. The ceremony complies. Silence in summer becomes profound. Even the motion of the host is more restrained, more fluid, like a river moving beneath still water. Then comes the sigh of autumn. In the outer world, leaves begin to fade from green to gold. The wind grows crisper. Shadows lengthen across the tatami. This is the season of introspection, of melancholy beauty, a moment of balance between fullness and absence. The tea room welcomes this shift with quiet gravity. The scroll may show a single brushstroke of falling leaves, or a word such as can, meaning cold or complete. The flowers in the alcove may be red chrysanthemums or dried stalks that sway as if in farewell. The tea bowls change again, richer in tone, with glazes that resemble bark, earth, ash. The matcha, stored for several months after spring harvest, now offers a fuller, rounder flavor. Its aroma deepens. It lingers longer in the cup. Sweets are shaped like fallen leaves or chestnuts. Their sweetness is mellow, their colors warm. The ceremony is slower now, more contemplative. Each gesture holds a hint of impermanence, a gentle sadness that does not wound but soothes. Autumn tea reminds us that all things fade and that there is beauty in the fading. Winter wraps the world in silence. Outside, frost etches the edge of stone lanterns. The wind moves with a sharper note. In the garden, only the pine remains green, steadfast in the cold. The tea room grows dim. Shadows settle in corners. The fire, now restored to the hearth in full, becomes the room's heart, its glow constant, its heat steady. The iron kettle hums softly, the sound known as matsukaze, the wind through pine trees, guiding the host by ear rather than thermometer. The tea bowls are heavy, often black or deep red, their weight grounding in the hands. Rakuware is favored rough, imperfect, intensely warm. The matcha is whisked vigorously to produce a thick foam, its warmth holding against the winter air. Sweets are comforting. Steamed manju, roasted sweet potatoes, dense confections with deep flavors. Even the movements of the host shift stronger now, more intentional, offering warmth not just in temperature, but in spirit. Winter tea is the most intimate. It asks nothing but presence. It gives everything through stillness, the eternal circle, and so the seasons move, each one finding its voice in a bowl of tea. There is no single way to prepare matcha. There is only the right way for this moment, in this season. The host responds to the world outside, not with spectacle, but with subtle grace. The guest, in turn, receives not just tea, but time. They sip the spring wind, the summer quiet, the melancholy of fall, the hush of snow. This is what it means to live with the seasons, not to pass through them, but to carry them, to make them welcome in the smallest ritual, to taste them in the warmth of a cup. One tea master wrote, "The way of tea is the way of life, nothing more." And so, a teacup is never just a teacup. It is the shape of light filtered through morning mist, the taste of a late autumn breeze, the sound of pine in midwinter, the scent of the first blossom breaking frost. Each sip is a page from the calendar of the heart. As the tea maker lifts the chow in the tea bowl, there is no separation between hand, clay, and intention. Yet this moment, like the season itself, is not static. The Japanese calendar once acknowledged 24 solar terms and 72 micro-seasons, each spanning just a few days. East wind melts the ice. The first cherry blossoms open. Frogs awaken from the earth. These subtle passages are not mere poetic curiosities. They are the breath of time itself, woven into tea. For those who dedicate themselves to the way of tea chadō, these micro-seasons become more than nature's calendar. They are teachings. They govern everything from the temperature of the water to the choice of hanging scroll in the alcove. Let us enter, now, into the soft hush of an autumn tea gathering. The garden path is scattered with fallen crimson and gold leaves. The guest walks slowly, aware of the crunch beneath the sandals, the chill creeping into the folds of their kimono. They pause at the supubai, the stone basin, where cool water waits for a ritual cleansing of the hands and mouth. This is not a washing away of dust, but of the mind's clutter. Inside the tea room, the kettle sings. A shoshi screen lets in diffused light. The host has chosen a hanging scroll with a single word, Kyo, autumn leaves. Beneath it, a small seasonal flower is arranged in a simple bamboo vase, perhaps a sprig of bush clover, or a single camellia just beginning to open. The utensils, too, reflect the season's nature. The tea bowl is heavier, earth-toned, to warm the hands in the cooling air. The natsum, the container for the matcha powder, is carved from dark wood, almost matte, like tree bark. Each item humbly offers itself to the narrative of fall-waning light, stillness, a deepening quiet. But more than symbolism, there is something felt. Autumn in tea is a sigh, a letting go, a slow bow before the sleep of winter. In winter, the tea room becomes an embrace, a shelter from the snow and wind outside. The ro, or sunken hearth, is used instead of the portable brazier. The fire's warmth radiates upward, drawing guests in. This shift in architecture is subtle but meaningful. Where once guests were distanced from the heat in summer, now they are invited closer. The scroll might read, Kanjisu, deep winter. The tea flowers are fewer now, more stark. A single white camellia, perhaps placed deliberately. Its stillness echoes the muted landscape outside, where branches bear frost and the pond is crusted over. Winter utensils are thick-walled, The bowls retain heat. The water, too, is slightly cooler than in summer, to avoid overpowering the fragile matcha in the dry air. And yet, despite the austerity, winter is intimate. In the dimness of the season, a guest may notice details more acutely: the fine grain in the ladle, the rhythm of water droplets, the movement of steam against the paper walls. Winter teaches the lesson of presence. To sit in a winter tea ceremony is to be held in stillness, not despite the cold, but because of it. Every act becomes more vivid against the hush. Spring stirs with the quiet hum of new life. As buds swell and plum blossoms unfold, the tea room is once again reimagined. Scrolls and utensils are refreshed. Light is welcomed back in. The seasonal confection, served before tea, known as wagashi, might take the shape of cherry petals or young greens. Light and translucent, it prepares the guest's palate for renewal. Spring bowls are thinner, often tinged with soft pinks or celadon greens. The bamboo whisk chasin used to froth the tea is perhaps new, its tines yet unbent. Even the scent of fresh tatami after winter airing feels more alive. Everything whispers beginnings. But spring also demands restraint. In traditional tea, the cherry blossom is never placed inside the tea room. Its beauty is too bold, too loud. Instead, the host may choose a less obvious bloom, a budding wild violet, a sprig of mountain vegetable, or simply fresh moss clinging to a stone. Spring in the tea room is a breath, not a declaration. By summer, the tea room breathes differently. It opens physically and spiritually. Screens are removed, walls shifted to allow an air and green light. The kettle is now placed over a portable brazier. The hearth has been closed, and the mood shifts toward coolness, air, and space. The scroll may say only, "Mu," emptiness. Summer's heat requires care. The host selects utensils that evoke clarity and lightness. Glazed porcelain bowls, perhaps pale blue or speckled with cool whites. The tea scoop, or chashaku, may be carved from lighter bamboo. Even the water ladle is handled with more precision to avoid too much steam. In this season, even sound becomes part of the cooling ritual. The clink of ice in a mizusashi, the faint echo of a water droplet falling into the hearth. Every motion is measured to calm the senses. And the wagashi? It might be translucent, shimmering like dew crafted from auger jelly, filled with sweet bean and shaped like a water lily. Its coolness is not just taste, but texture, sight, and time. Though the year circles through its quarters budding, blooming, falling, freezing, the tea maker is never simply reflecting nature. They are echoing its impermanence. The seasons do not merely decorate the tea room, they define its heart. In the words of Sen no Rikyu, the great tea master of the 16th century, "Though many people drink tea, if you do not know the way of tea, tea will drink you." To know tea, then, is not to master a beverage, or a ceremony, or even an aesthetic. It is to dissolve into the rhythm of the seasons, cup by cup, to feel the rain in the scent of wet clay, to taste the cold in a winter bowl, to watch a spring petal fall into silence. In every gathering, the tea maker offers not a performance, but a season distilled, ephemeral, singular, and unrepeatable. In the tea room, silence is not the absence of sound. It is a presence. Unlike Western notions of silence, as something awkward, something to be filled within chadō, silence is sculpted. It is molded with intent, like clay around a void. The true tea master does not merely speak less. They listen more. There is a word used often in Japanese aesthetics, ma. It refers to the space between things, not emptiness, but a living pause. In the tea room, ma is everywhere. It is in the stillness between motions, the interval between placing a tea bowl and lifting the ladle, the space between one breath and the next. These are not mistakes or hesitations. They are the very soul of the ritual. When a host kneels before the hearth and folds the fukusa, the silk cloth used to purify utensils, each gesture is purposeful, each silence a container. The guest, too, learns to listen to the way the water boils, to the sound of the bamboo whisk, to the soft rustle of kimono fabric as someone shifts their weight. In this way, the tea room becomes not just a space, but a vessel for silence. The design of a traditional tea hut, or sheshitsu, is an architectural homage to quietude. A typical tea room is small, often no more than 2 tatami mats wide. The ceiling is low, forcing all who enter to bow. The entrance itself, the nijiriguchi, is no taller than a crawl space. Samurai were required to leave their swords behind. Everyone entered humbly, on equal footing. The materials are natural: wood, paper, clay, bamboo. They absorb sound. Light is diffused, filtered through washi screens. The hearths glow, the single hanging scroll, the flower in the alcove. Each is chosen not for decoration, but for stillness. This space does not beg for attention. It waits. Every sound inside the chashitsu gains significance. A drop of water, a creak of floorboard, a sigh. In such a room, words feel heavier, and so they are used sparingly. Often, entire tea gatherings unfold with only the briefest exchanges. A welcome, a comment on the hanging scroll, a bow of thanks. Conversation, when it does emerge, is soft, more like mist than speech. There is a silence between host and guest that cannot be taught. It is the silence of trust. A skilled tea maker learns to read the unsaid. They notice a guest's subtle pause before choosing a bowl, the slight tightness in their posture. With no need for explanation, the host adjusts the angle of a utensil, the timing of the tea. This unspoken dialogue is what makes each tea ceremony unique. It is not a performance, but an attunement. The guest is not there to watch. They are there to be seen. And in being seen, gently, without intrusion or judgment, they soften. Silence here becomes not emptiness, but welcome. It offers room to breathe, to feel, to rest in awareness. The great tea masters of old believed that if a single bowl of tea was made with pure heart and received in kind, nothing more was needed. No words, no explanation, just presence. Silence in the tea room is textured. It is never total. The soft hissing of the iron kettle, known as matsukaze, the wind in the pines, is a constant companion. This sound, delicate and steady, marks the center of the room. Around it, other sounds appear and vanish like dragonflies. The whisper of the ladle dipping into water, the whisk's rhythmic stroke. The tea bowl placed gently on tatami. To the untrained ear, these are almost nothing, but to the practitioner, each sound carries meaning. A seasoned guest can tell how experienced the host is by how the water is poured, how the whisk sings, how the lid is closed. The tea ceremony becomes a kind of music, its tempo guided by awareness, its silence not absence, but interval. In Zen practice, so deeply entwined with tea silence is not escape. It is revelation. As the host moves through the ritual, Mind and body unite. There is no rush, no reaching, no anticipation. Each action completes itself. A tea master once said, "When you pour water, just pour water." It seems simple, but in a world of distractions, doing one thing truly, fully, is radical. In the tea room, silence teaches this lesson. Even for the guest, the stillness becomes a kind of mirror. They begin to notice their own thoughts, the way the mind drifts, the way it resists silence, then begins to soften into it. A tea gathering can last less than an hour, but the stillness it opens may echo for days. There are no teachings written on the wall, no lectures, no demands, just the shape of silence and what it reflects. When the host bows at the end of the gathering, they offer more than tea. They offer the silence shared. It is not a silence of emptiness, but of fullness. A space where nothing had to be said, and yet everything was communicated. In a world so saturated with noise, the practice of tea reminds us of another language, a language made of steam, gesture, breath, and pause. Perhaps the greatest gift the traditional tea maker gives is not matcha, nor flowers, nor poetry. It is this, a moment to be held, in quiet, without demand, in the presence of care. This is the silence that remains after the tea has been drunk, after the guest has departed, and after the room has returned to stillness. It is the silence that lives on in the heart. It is simply the shape of tea. The tea ceremony, as it is practiced today, did not emerge from a vacuum. It is the product of centuries of care, passed not merely through instruction, but through presence. The way of tea is a lineage, not a style. And lineage lives not in books or diagrams, but in hands. The old tea masters taught with their bodies. They demonstrated, again and again, the angle of the wrist, the way to turn a bowl, the rhythm of a breath before lifting the ladle. These were not instructions to be memorized, but movements to be absorbed. Even today, apprentices learn not from lectures, but from long hours of silent observation. They kneel in the corner of the tea room, watching the host perform the same action 100 times. In time, their hands begin to mirror what they see. But only with deep patience, humility, and repetition does understanding take root. This is the true meaning of keiko practice. It is not performance. It is not personal expression. It is a return, a bow to those who came before. To speak of tea makers is to speak of people who live quietly, yet carry entire histories in their touch. Some come from families who have prepared tea for generations. Others find their way to chadō later, in life drawn by the calm, the discipline, or the beauty of impermanence. But all are bound by the same thread, the silent vow to preserve and pass on what cannot be captured in words. In Kyoto, one might still find a tea master whose lineage stretches back to the early Edo period. A woman whose grandmother taught her to whisk tea in spring with a lighter touch. A man who still uses the same chasen shop his teacher used, because the bamboo knows. These are not just artisans, they are stewards. Each has been shaped by their own mentor, some stern, others gentle, but all deeply rooted in the traditions of ichi-go ichi-e and reverence for the ordinary. Their fingers remember what time forgets. When we speak of lineage, we must also speak of tools. Many tea practitioners use the same implements their teachers used and their teachers before them. A lacquered natsume with worn edges, a whisk whose tines are softened by age, a tea scoop carved by a long-gone master with an inscription so faint it's almost unreadable. These are not antiques to be admired. They are living instruments. Each scratch, each patina, each gentle crack tells a story of touch and transmission. A tea maker becomes not an owner, but a guardian. They care for these tools with tenderness, not as objects of possession, but as bridges across time. When a teacher finally passes down their own shishaku to a student, it is more than a gift. It is a silent affirmation. You are ready. And in that moment, the lineage continues not through ceremony, but through shared silence and trust. In traditional tea schools, the student often follows the teacher not just in the tea room, but in daily life. They sweep the path, prepare charcoal, wash the bowls. This is not drudgery, it is immersion. In doing the humble tasks, the apprentice begins to understand the deeper rhythm of the tea life. They learn how early the teacher rises, how carefully flowers are chosen, how even the broom is placed with intent. These are the hours not seen by guests, but they form the foundation of the entire experience. The apprentice becomes, for years, a shadow, and slowly that shadow fills with light. A seasoned tea maker will not say when the apprentice is ready. Here is no official moment. One day, without announcement, the teacher may step aside. They may say only, "Prepare tea," and the student, hands steady from countless hours of invisible practice, will begin. But not all lineages remain unbroken. Wars, fires, modernization, these have severed many traditional tea lines. Some families lost their entire tea heritage in a single night. Others found themselves without students, without children interested in carrying on the art. And yet, even in these ruptures, the way of tea finds a path. Some tea practitioners today dedicate themselves to reconstructing lost forms, piecing together rituals from surviving documents, oral histories, fragments of bowls. Others blend lineages, gently borrowing from different schools with deep respect, creating a practice that honors both past and present. In remote villages, one might still find an elder who remembers how her mother lit the hearth or folded the fukusa. These memories, though faint, become seeds. With care, they grow again. The hands may change, but the gesture survives. In a modern world of digital noise and disposable moments, the slow art of tea might seem like a relic. And yet young tea makers are returning, some from busy cities, others from abroad, drawn by something they cannot name. They kneel on tatami. They learn the breath. They practice the silence. And in doing so, they join the chain not as mimics of the past, but as stewards of the present. They understand that lineage is not preservation of ashes, but the tending of flame. As one tea teacher once said to a student, "Don't try to be me. Be the one who holds the bowl with care." In that simple act, everything continues. In the rhythm of a tea gathering, time does not pass with urgency, but with gentle inevitability. From the moment the first bow is exchanged at the entrance, the host and guest begin a quiet journey toward parting. There is a word in tea tradition, yuzari, which refers to the twilight hour of a tea ceremony. The light has softened. The kettle's song has grown quieter. The final sweets have been served. And now only one act remains, the sharing of the final bowl. It is not merely the last cup of tea. It is a distillation of everything before it. The phrase ichigo ichii, one time, one meeting, has been echoed throughout this series. But here, in this moment, it rings with deeper clarity. No matter how many times a host and guest may meet, no two tea gatherings are the same. The weather, the mood, the light, the temperature of the water, even the subtle tremor in a hand, all are unrepeatable. The last bowl acknowledges this. It is a conscious offering, a final gesture that says, "This moment will never come again. Let us meet it fully." The host selects the bowl not at random, but with care, perhaps one with a small imperfection, a sign of age, or a glaze that catches the dimming light just so. The matcha is whisked gently, no longer in the rhythm of performance, but in the soft cadence of farewell. The guest, too, receives it differently now. The bowl is heavier in the hands, the aroma sharper, the warmth more noticeable against the cool of evening. They turn the bowl slowly, examining not just its surface, but the invisible touch of all who shaped it: the potter, the glazier, the teacher, the hand that passed it down. And in sipping, there is no rush, only attention. After the final sip, the bowl is returned. The guest bows. The host receives it not as an object, but as a memory. They rinse it carefully, as always, but now the gesture holds a kind of tenderness, as if washing not just clay, but time. There may be no words, only the quiet of hands at work, the last coals in the hearth, a breeze pressing gently against the shoshi screen, and then one final bow. When the guest rises, they pass again through the low entrance. The garden path is the same as before, but not truly. Even the stones beneath the sandals seem to remember. The scent of matcha lingers faintly in the sleeves. The silence of the tea room echoes behind them, not empty, but filled with presence. The host remains inside for a time, cleaning slowly, replacing each item. But more than maintenance, this is reverence. The tea room must be returned to stillness, not just physically, but spiritually. The flowers are removed. The scroll is taken down. The kettle's song has ended, and yet the room is not vacant. It holds the afterglow of shared time, like the embers of a fading fire. There is no record of the tea gathering, no photographs, no signatures, only memory. In this way, the tea tradition protects something precious, the value of the unrecorded moment. The guest may recall the curve of the bowl, the scent of charcoal, the way light moved across the tatami. But over time, the details blur. What remains is a feeling. Years later, in another room, another bowl in hand, they may remember suddenly, vividly, that final sip, and with it, the quiet presence of the host, the shared silence, the last bowl. For the traditional tea maker, there is never truly a last bowl, only transitions. The same bowl may be used again tomorrow, but it will not be the same. The season will have shifted. The water will taste different. The guest will bring another mood. And the host, too, will have changed, however subtly. In this way, tea becomes a circle, not an endless repetition, but a spiral, a return with depth. To make the last bowl of the day is also to prepare for the first bowl of the next. There is always another guest, another moment, another chance to offer silence in the shape of steam and clay. In the end, the way of tea leaves behind no grand monument. There are no temples for tea, no statues, only moments. A bowl lifted, a breath stilled, a guest seen fully just once. And perhaps that is enough, because in that last bowl, quietly shared and gently remembered, the entire spirit of the tradition endures, not loud, not eternal, but full, full enough to be passed on, full enough to be tasted once and never forgotten. It begins with water, cool, clear, and silent, brought to a simmer in an iron kettle, tended with care by hands that have stirred the same motion for years. The tools are few and humble: a bamboo whisk, a cloth, a bowl. Yet within them lives a world of discipline, memory, and grace. We have followed the tea maker through seasons and silences. We have knelt beside them as snow fell, watched steam rise in summer's heat. We have listened to the absence of words and heard their meaning. What began as a drink of powdered leaf whisked into warm water became something else: a mirror, a path, a question. What remains when nothing is left to prove? In the tea room, identity softens. The world outside is left at the threshold. Titles, tasks, ambitions, they dissolve into steam. Here, there is only attention, the feel of the tatami beneath the knees, the scent of wet bamboo, the moment when two hands meet, one offering, one receiving, both present. The tea makers of old did not chase perfection. They bowed before imperfection, wabi-sabi, and found depth in its quiet honesty. A chipped bowl, a crooked flower, a moment that will never come again. The lineage continues, not in institutions or fame, but in small rooms, in apprentices who rise before dawn to sweep the garden path. In elders who pass down the way, a bowl should be turned not as a rule, but as a kindness. Even as modern life grows louder, faster, more distracted, something remains: a breath, a pause, a return. Perhaps it begins when someone, weary from noise, opens a door to a quiet space, and inside finds nothing but a low table, a kettle, and a waiting bowl. They sit, they watch, they receive, and something shifts. Tea is not just prepared, it is offered, and in receiving it, we are reminded of a truth we did not know we'd forgotten: that there is beauty in attention, sanctity in silence, and that, even now, in this world, a single bowl of tea, made with care, can be enough. The steam rises, and then it fades, but its warmth and its stillness remain. Thank you for joining us on this quiet journey into the world of traditional Japanese tea. Until the next bowl, sleep tight, everyone. Hope you have sweet dreams and wake up refreshed.